All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kim Poe. I am the Children and Young Adult Consultant with the Connecticut State Library. I am so happy to be sharing this presentation with you, empowering teens, enhancing information literacy through interactive programming. I first saw our speakers today, Stacey and Liz, speak at Web Junction, and what are librarians really good at doing? Borrowing. Sometimes with permission, sometimes without. Sharing is caring in our world. I'm going to let Stacey and Liz introduce themselves. We will be sharing the recording. We will be sharing slides and additional handouts. So feel free to share with any colleagues that weren't able to make it and enjoy. And I'm so glad to be sharing this with you today. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz. I'm the Education and Engagement Manager at the Center for an Informed Public at the University of Washington. I have been with the center since it opened in 2019. And before that, I was a teacher and librarian in middle and high school. And excited to be with you. I'll pass it over to Stacey.
Hello, I am a research scientist at the University of Washington Information School. My primary appointment is with the Technology and Social Change Group, or TASHA, but I have been working closely with CIP on a variety of projects for many years now. And Liz and I are really excited to be here today and to share some of the work that we've been doing with public and school libraries. So I'm going to launch right into things. And if I can, okay, there we go. So just as kind of what we're going to go over today, I'm going to talk briefly kind of like our approach to creating different programs or services for library patrons and teens. And then we have so much stuff that we have worked on. And so we're always trying to figure out kind of like bigger buckets to kind of make it a little bit more manageable. So it's not just so much of a flood of information. So we're going to talk about our work with creating games, information literacy related games, kind of teen focused like workshops, things that maybe kind of feel a little bit more like formal learning and that could be done in a school setting, either by a school or a public librarian. And then Liz is going to talk about the school and public library partnerships that we've done that are also a lot of them are events as well. She'll get into that more. And then we're going to talk about just tips and lessons learned about talk around approaching these topics with teens, and then we're going to try very hard to have a bunch of time for Q&A. So our approach when designing and creating information literacy programming for teens is that first of all, we're really situated in research. So we're at the University of Washington, we're at the Center for Informed Public and or CIP. And CIP, we have some leading researchers that understand misinformation, rumors, information literacy. And so we take that research and that understanding and develop educational interventions based on this knowledge. And and part of that is that from this research, we know that and we seek to understand even further how everyday life contexts influence how people perceive information, right? And I think that that's um, relatively easy to understand, especially, these days where, you have a piece of information and how it is interpreted and acted upon and put to use can be very different based on where somebody lives, their political orientation, their educational background and so on. And another thing is that we go beyond discrete digital or information like literacy skills and really try to incorporate the influences of information ecosystems and psychology. So I think I think we've all had so I think we all had this experience of especially online as just as an example, where you're all extremely skilled around, like, again, information literacy, critical thinking skills. Like we're like, there's some top people in this virtual room of like the critical thinking ability. But I think we've all had those moments where we see something online and it like connects to us emotionally somehow, and we're like, what? And then you like take a beat, or maybe even show it to somebody else, and they're like, I don't, that doesn't seem right. And you're like, oh man, like I just like I fell for something because it somehow connects to some, a certain aspect of our identity or our belief system, right? And so, so we take that, and then the way the platforms are developed also influence that even more. So we take all those pieces and as we think about designing interventions, and so we're not focused just solely on these skills without that kind of greater context. And then also unique to our work is that we do co-design for much of what we have will be presenting today. So, and we do this co-design work with a variety of different audiences depending on what we're doing. So we have done, and we're going to touch upon this like throughout the presentation about kind of how a little bit more about how we do this. But we work very closely with public and school librarians. Because they are and you are the experts in, what works about you in librarianship in your own communities. And so we really see that, co-creating and understanding these different contexts and bringing all these different varied expertise together is really important to make a meaningful educational interventions. And so this is reflected into a wide variety of partnerships that we have used to create this work. This is not everybody that we have worked with over the years, but as you can see, we have worked a lot with, I wanted to touch upon this and bring some of these partners to light because we've worked a lot with smaller and more rural libraries as well, in addition to more urban systems like Seattle Public. But a lot, again, in a lot of our work and talking with libraries is that we've seen and found that, again, sometimes this co-design work ends up being done more by these larger, more urban systems, and then thus is not necessarily reflective of how programs and services work in more in the resource levels in smaller and more rural libraries. So let's get into things and talk a little bit more about like kind of concretely like what we do and what we have for sharing and for use. Um, and so we have a set of games. And again, many of these were co-designed with public libraries. Some of these are also co-designed with the different communities that the games are targeted at as well. And so we found that games, especially with teens, working with teens, is a really great way to talk about some of these trickier information literacy concepts or in misinformation. Because especially in public library contexts, where for the most part, it's not, compulsory that a teen has to show up at a program. And so, having a session like come learn about fact checking is not, for many teens, they're just not going to show up to that. But if you can hide the vegetables, if you will, with learning inside a game and promote the game of come and do this fun activity with bring your friends and do a game together, then that will get them in the door. And then you can then kind of sneak in some of these lessons throughout the game in the interaction. And which and when with these games, as we go into them and as you explore them more on your own, um, you'll see that they incorporate debriefs. And so you don't just play the game and then the game is over and you leave, like maybe if you play Monopoly with some friends, but you have these debriefs where it's facilitated by a librarian or a teacher, um, that helps people kind of put the pieces together and helps them reflect upon what they just did. And we found, and also research backs up that these debriefs are really important sites of learning. And so they're really a critical piece to making sure that the games aren't just fun, but then also that the teens or others, the players, take away these bits of learning and knowledge. So I'm going to show you some examples of some things that we've created that these are shareable, so you're able to try them out and see how they work, or again, just take inspiration from them. We with co-created with a set of teen librarians over the summer based on some work done by another researcher. We have trolling telestrations, so using the game of telestrations, which if you don't know, it's where somebody like writes down like a phrase and then they pass it to somebody else and then they draw a picture based on that phrase and then you pass it around. So it's like telephone. Um, and so, but with our game, you play telestrations, but then you play it again and you make somebody a troll. And so this is we think this game works best in person, but we did it online as we were playtesting it. And so you can see in this game, like a person wrote pulling a rabbit out of a hat. So that was the phrase. But then the troll drew someone pulling an elephant out of the hat. And so this game again shows like how, somebody who is kind of a malicious actor online can really disrupt the flow of information. But it's also like really fun and funny too. And so again, and then again, you pull in these debriefs and have teens kind of talk about their experience playing the game, and then also pulling in their own experiences from what they've seen online. Uh, and then this other game is called Misinfo Jeopardy, and this was actually created by our group of MLIS students at the information school, and this was played at this big event that happened here at UW over the spring. And I have to tell you, I was just a few booths down from this Jeopardy game, and this was so popular. Like teens really loved playing it, and it's really just and again we have like its whole setup. So if you want to run this, you can go and we have a link and you can print it off. And this could be done as a passive program or something that's more facilitated. And the teens really had fun of like, trying to guess who said something. Was it Eleanor Roosevelt or Olivia Rodrigo, for example, is one of like the questions. And again, it kind of again there's the focus on the fun, and then again they can kind of build in those reflections and learnings with that. One of our kind of longest running games and most established games is our escape rooms. So we have this whole kind of a suite of games that are puzzle-based games that are done in a group. And there are in-person games, and then there's also a few of the games have online versions that are they and again, what's really I think important about these games is they're done collaboratively, and so so you can see in this picture like people are trying to figure out like which face is real, which is the AI generated face and which is the real person. And as they solve a puzzle, then they get clues, and then there's a larger kind of narrative that they're trying to solve. And then again, afterwards, there's a debrief. And there are different themes that the games cover. This one that you see is called Euphorigen, which is a kind of a news-based game. The narrative is around the government wants to put some supplement in the water that's created by this company, and is this something that should be done or not? And then there is a more recent game that was created uh, around like a teen council elections, and you can see like a picture down there, and it's a funny picture that was created that was supposed to be just kept among friends, then gets shared out and gets spread out throughout the school. So and these are really popular with especially as regards to Liz is going to talk about with the events that we do. And the in-person games, everything's there. You can print off everything, and put the packets together in order to play. And then the online version, you play using like Zoom, and then people log in and they work together together online. And then we also have more. So then this kind of next bucket of stuff is what I was trying to figure out, is like kind of teen, kind of focused, oriented, more workshops. So these are interactive programs. They feel a little bit more like you're learning something, but we also try to make it so they don't feel too much like school. And so again, thinking about the public library settings, but we have also heard from public librarians that they can very easily be, especially public librarians will go to schools, especially if they don't have their own librarian, and run workshops. And so they said that some of these fit well in that context too. This first one is talking about, this is a video program that we developed with two rural public libraries. These photos are from the Smithville Public Library in Texas, and then we also worked with the Soton Library out in Eastern Washington. And what this is a it can be run on a variety of different lengths, just kind of it can be done like in just like an hour or two, or over a couple of days, where teens get to work with video. And you can be done with more higher end equipment, like you see with this teen, or we've also done it with smartphones and gimbals, which is like gimbals, like a fancy selfie stick, basically. Um, and and then and while we're doing the program, we have them talk about things like deceptive editing techniques, or again, framing, way information is framed as part of a story or storytelling, or just again, things that they, as an opportunity to talk about things in their community that maybe like, they want to make like a public service announcement about. So there's lots of different ways to kind of build in this information media literacy. But again, what gets the teens excited and what gets them coming into the door is to get to make video and get to make movies. And then we have a misinformation play pack, which this is was designed for a little bit younger ages. It goes from 8 to 15 is what it was tested with. And these activities were tested with kids from the Seattle Public and San Diego Public Library patrons, and worked with those libraries. And it's more of a set of curriculum that you can do like individual workshops or build over time. And it's play based, so it's more fun than like, again, sitting in like, it's supposed to be more fun than like a traditional kind of classroom setting. But and one of them is set up more like a game, like that uses Minecraft, to talk about like the rabbit hole effect. But it can be done as like a set of like a longer series as well. And again, this is again, by being developed like with kids, it really is situated in their own kind of experiences with these different kind of issues, and again makes it very relevant to their interests. And then we have, and so those are kind of some some bigger workshops. But we also have some shorter workshops that we've developed, that are 30 to 60 minutes long on a variety of different topics, and we're developing more as well. And the one is focused on what we call like the big seven emotions, which really explores how social media uses emotions to make you do things like click, share, take action. And it concludes with teens like making their own, like if they're going to make their own social media campaign, what emotions they would use and how they would kind of to go about to do that. Uh, and then we have a lesson on fact checking, how to fact check TikTok, and which that's from the graphic is from, and um, talks about how to, the different the skills that you can bring in from just, fact checking in general, and then again, how it kind of can work through using the TikTok platform. And then we have another, and those two, the first two lessons were um, a, version, or I'm trying to think of the right word. They were adapted. That's the word. They were adapted from lessons that were co-created with school librarians. So we took lessons that were developed in the more of a school setting, a context, or excuse me, teachers and librarians. So we took lessons that were developed in like a school context and have worked to make them fit better in a public library setting. And then the last one is a very new workshop, which we're calling Truth and Lies, that I worked with a group of teen librarians over the summer, in the spring, and it gets into using the game, Two Truths and a Lie, to explore how generative AI chatbots can generate false or misleading information, and how you don't know if there are two truths or two lies, or what, and the outputs that were all truths when you get an output from a chat bot. So that is kind of just some big overviews from some of those kind of more discrete programs that we have created. And now I'm going to pass it over to Liz to talk about the school and library partnerships.
Thank you. I also meant to mention in my intro that I am based in Vermont, so extra excited to be talking to all of my neighbors in Connecticut here. Um, so yeah, we've called this school and library partnerships. It's actually, I'm going to talk to you about two events that we have started in Washington and that other groups across the country have picked up and adapted and made their own. And we're going to see how schools and libraries have partnered on them, but we're also just going to see how like different types of libraries have picked these things up. So we can go ahead. Next. There we go. The first one I'm going to talk about is called Misinfo Day, and this is a big event that we have done at the University of Washington since 2019 and has also been done at Washington State University. They have two locations in Washington that we have done this event at historically. And basically, you can see this big picture from 2019. We brought 200 students onto the UW campus to learn from our faculty and librarians and PhD students and all of us at the CIP about how to navigate our complex information environment that we're all living in now. And we played the escape room, and they heard from guest speakers. And since 2019, the past 2 years, we did this event with 500 people at UW. And in the COVID years in between there, we did virtual events, which ended up being kind of a silver lining because it let us create things that teachers could use or librarians could use in their classrooms and at their libraries on their own, and like kind of not needing us as much to be right there in the room. So I'm going to tell you about how some other groups have kind of picked this up and used it. Next. So we've started to, oh, can you go back? Well, I can do it. Thank you. So we have started to shift our focus from our events at our own campuses to helping other groups do this on their own. So we call this Misinfo Day at my community. And the first group who did an event outside Washington was in California. They're a group called the Media Literacy Coalition. And they had an event for about 100 students that was very similar to our model at UW, where they brought students from different schools to an event space, and they had guest speakers from the local universities and colleges talk to them, played the escape room. Always need the escape room for the fun. And that is something they did it last year, and now they're going to do it again this year. And the next example we can go to is maybe coming up. I can talk about it until it comes up. The next one is Des Moines University, I think is what's going to pop up. And the librarians at that university. Oh, I'll pause for a second till we get back.
I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. There's like a lag around this, so apologies.
That's
Let's
okay.
see.
Maybe I ruined it when I made you go backward. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. I
Um,
think.
so Des Moines University, they're a medical university, and we supported them in doing a 2-day event where the first day they had students come play the escape room, and then the second day they had a panel of their faculty that talked specifically about health misinformation to the students there. And the last one is was at Hoboken, New Jersey, at a private school there. And this was this past December. They did this right before their students went on their winter break, and they played the escape room. And then they brought in a speaker from a center at NYU that has very similar mission to the CIP, and also who you see tiny standing there presenting is the school outreach librarian from the Hoboken Public Library. And she came in and did a session that was really cool that I'm actually going to tell you more about in a second. So those are just some examples of how people have made this their own. And we are right now in the process of figuring out how we can um, best support people in being able to do these events at their schools or libraries or colleges. Next. So this is like an example schedule of how the day could go. And I'm actually gonna pause for a second and back up um, and just talk about the idea behind having a misinfo day, like having a big event, is that you are there can be kind of a few different things. If your school or your library hasn't really done much media literacy, it can be a great way to kind of kick off and say, like, this is something we're going to do now, and we'll have this really fun day, and it will build awareness among the students and also the staff. We hear from teachers a lot that it's hard to find the time to do something like this, and people are like, they have all their other curriculum they're trying to do. So making it like a school-wide or library-wide thing can just help to like build excitement for it that may not exist yet. And I had a second thing, but it has gone out of my head. Of course, helpful for the students to learn. I got it. The second thing is that the version we're working on designing now is really meant to set a foundation for teenagers that then the library or the school can continue to build on with like discrete lessons throughout the year. So in this example schedule, this survey says session is the one that the public librarian at Hoboken created. And I thought she did something really cool. She took a survey, or maybe 2 surveys, that had been done on information literacy and online habits of teenagers. And she put up some of the questions that they were asked as statements and would have the students talk in their groups about, do you agree with this? Do you disagree? You can see the flags that they have. And each group had a set of flags where they could hold up whether they strongly agreed, strongly disagreed, etc. And then they had discussion about that. And then she would show what the survey had said, like 60% of teens said this was, so they did agree or didn't agree. And they'd kind of see how they compared to the survey as a whole. And that brought up some really interesting discussion. Next. The second one is the escape room. We do the escape room every misinfo day just because students get super into it. They are very competitive. It's very fun, and it helps them. At least this specific escape room, Euphorigen, that Stacey was talking about, has the like which face is real AI photos, and many students think they're really good at telling what's AI and what's not. And these photos, which are from like I want to say they're from years ago. It's not like they're the newest AI technology. And they're really hard to tell. Students get stumped on this puzzle, and adults, everybody gets stumped on this puzzle a lot. So it provides kind of a nice, uh, humbling reality check that some AI we are probably good at spotting, but some of it we're certainly not. And it's too good for us to tell just with our eyes, which is just another reminder that you need to go check. You can't always just rely on, what you can see. And next. And then third, um, is your keynote. So bringing in someone that is well versed in media literacy or the information space and having them speak to the students. Next. The new schedule that we're working on assumes, well, I don't know about assumes. The new schedule doesn't require someone to be able to get somebody to come speak to the students. It's basically we hand you a package of slides and materials and you facilitate that and you don't need to bring anybody else in. So this is the version that it is right now. This may not be what it ends up at, but you get a little sneak peek, where it starts with the escape room, because again, that's a really high energy way to get kids engaged from the beginning. We'll probably use like the flag activity as part of the debrief of the escape room. And then the two other parts of the day, the objective will really be to help students understand how the information environment has changed very drastically in not a lot of time, like, the past 20, 30, 40 years, and have them compare. Take an event. The event I'm working on right now is the LA fires. And we have a team at the CIP who does what we call rapid research. And that means that when something like wildfires, a hurricane, a big election, some like big news event happens, our researchers are in real time tracking social media data and seeing what are the narratives that are coming up, what are the rumors that are spreading around. And since we've been doing that for years, we know like what types of false and misleading information show up every single time. So students will look at social media posts about so again, right now we're just using the LA fires, and then they'll compare that to how traditional media is covering it and just talk about the pros and cons of each and really like dig into that and think about where they're getting their information, what are the pros and cons of that. And then we'll end it with them coming up with we're going to give them a few metaphors that we use for how to understand our current information space and give them a chance to come up with their own metaphor or kind of story to help them understand it. And this is all work that's, again, happening right now. We're just starting out in 2 weeks with a new group of fellows. We have a CIP fellowship that I encourage any of you to check out. But we're going to be working with 10 teachers, K through 12, on essentially we're going to say, this is what we think this day should be. And you tell us, what's wrong with it and what we need to change and how it will work at each level, because we've only done it for high school so far. And hopefully end up with something that each grade level could do in their schools to, again, just like kind of boost the awareness, get kids excited about this, get teachers and everybody excited about this, and provide that foundation that they can build on throughout the year. Next. This is the final project that we're going to talk about today. This is called Media Mentorship, and this is an event that, sorry, I'm just going to quickly answer this because I see it popping up the chat. The CIP fellowship is for pretty much anyone who is working in information literacy, misinformation. It's very broad. And there's two different tracks. So there's one track that's specifically for educators, but that includes librarians. And then there's a track that's more open. It's on our website. I encourage you to check it out if you're interested. All right, so Media Mentorship is a project that was started by a teacher who came to the first Misinfo Day, a social studies teacher, and he was super excited. about his students learning all this stuff. And he thought, you know what, all the adults in their lives really need to learn these things too, because nobody, the information environment is totally different and nobody taught them how to navigate it. So he had his students teach, it's a teen-led event where they are teaching skills to their parents. And he's done this every year since 2020, I want to say. And the picture you see there is, I'm getting a little ahead of myself with the slides, I realized, because I have a whole slide on this. But the picture you see there is 3 different teachers, all of their social studies students, doing their event in the big cafeteria there. And so this engages with the community. And in general, the kind of typical model is that you, again, bring in someone who can speak to whoever your audience is for about 20 minutes, do a keynote, and then the audience goes off and sees different science fair style interactive presentations that the students are leading. And so you'll see in that one photo, there's people with their phones and there's QR codes on the screen. So with that specific project, the students taught how to, I think it was how to like find better coverage of claims, like how to, you see something and then checking it on fact-checking sites or checking it on trusted news sites. And so the adults there had to go and actually do the thing that the students had taught them so that it actually hopefully sunk in and that they remembered it the next time they were on their own social media seeing something questionable. Next. So I'm going to talk about how we prepare teens for this real quickly, and then I'm going to talk about, similar to Misinfo Day, we've worked with different schools and libraries to do this in different ways and adapt it. So I'll share some of those examples. So in preparing teens to teach, there's about 7 lessons that we suggest, although people can do, if they already have things that they really like, they can do like any media literacy lesson. But we try to hit on these 4 objectives. So we start with, again, looking at what does our information environment look like? How has it changed over time? And what am I seeing on my own feed? And that's really helpful for the teenagers and for whoever's facilitating to kind of get to know what those teenagers are seeing online. We have them do an activity where they just pull up whatever their favorite social media is and they look at their first 20 to 30 posts that are showing up and actually like stop and analyze and reflect on what they're seeing, what kinds of content are showing up, how many ads are showing up, how many things that they chose to follow versus things that are being suggested to them by the algorithm. And that is usually it's like an interesting activity because how often do any of us slowly look at and consider what's on our social media? We do this with adults too in like professional development workshops that we do. And it's always very interesting to see. I recommend everyone do that after our presentation here. And then we go from that to here's how our brain works. So like what's going on that's making us process information the way we do? Why are we falling for misinformation? What are the cognitive biases that are at play there? And then we bring in, okay, and here's how the tech works, and here's how it takes advantage of some of those biases, and here's how, it brings us down these rabbit holes and into these filter bubbles and all that stuff. And only after we kind of set up all of that and kind of like the backstory to what's going on, do we then say, okay, now here are the strategies we can use to tell what's true, to investigate unfamiliar sources. And I think that that has been really important because another question we get a lot is, how do I get teenagers to care about checking things? And I think this really helps, kind of starting with what they're seeing and going through all of this before you get to that, because then they understand why they need to be checking things. And I also think that I think we often like tell ourselves the story of, oh, teenagers or adults or whoever it is, they don't care enough to check and take that time. And that can certainly be true. But I also think that with teens and young kids especially, I think that they haven't seen enough examples of what like misinformation and false misleading information looks like, to know to like have that red flag going off to show them when to check. So I think sometimes we're saying, oh, they don't care, but I think they really just like don't have those signals yet. And I think that's something that we can help with in showing them a lot of examples of things that should be, setting off those alarm bells in their head. I think, yeah, I just think they don't have enough examples. And how do you get good at anything? You practice it. So I think we can help them do that. Next. So this is that photo again. So it started Ballard High School in Seattle. Their audience has been families since 2020. And they've either this year they did it as a grade team together, but they've also done it at, sorry, not a grade team, a department, a social studies team. But this teacher has also just done it with only his class as well. Next. So then we got to work with teachers and school librarians from these places you see marked on the map. And we showed them this event, we showed them the lessons, and these are all rural areas of Washington. And we just said to them, would you use this in your classroom? How would you need to change it? Could you do an event like this at your school? Do you think that would be helpful? Not helpful? Like, kind of tell us what you're thinking. And so I'm going to show you a few examples of what they did. Next. This was at Chimacum High School. So first of all, I'll say all the teachers and librarians we were working with were like a resounding yes, we want to do it, but we have to figure out kind of how makes most sense for us. So this school did a similar thing where the students are making these presentations that are, they're like 5 minutes, they're very short. And they didn't think people would come just for that, but they already had this very fun taco bingo night, sounded amazing, fundraiser that was happening at the school in the evening. And so they like tacked on to that. And they said, okay, people will get their tacos and they'll have time to go around the student presentations and then they'll all play bingo. And they also had a media mentorship like bingo card where if the families visited each presentation, it was kind of a small class that was doing it, so there weren't too many. They could fill out their bingo card and then they'd get entered for I think it was a gift card at a restaurant, which is very fun. Medical Lake High School. This teacher did not think that people would come in the evening. She didn't think students would be able to come back to school. She didn't think families would because of work, because of whatever, but she still wanted to do something engaging with her community. So she reached out to a bunch of local businesses and asked if they would be interested in having little like displays in their business about tips for navigating the information environment. And so they ended up creating displays for a dentist office, a wellness center, and the public library. And that was cool because they went and like toured the different businesses so their displays could fit the business aesthetic. And so that like the dentist one has a lot of dental related misleading information that they were like myths they were checking. So that was really cool. And they had QR codes on them, some of them, so you could go and like do a little quiz or activity or learn more. And the last one is Cedar Woolley High School. This one was very special because they had the students from the high school are close enough where they walked over to the community center with their presentations. And there were about 30 to 40 senior citizens that came to see them. And the students presented to them, and then they all had lunch together. And then the seniors had also been prepped to bring something that they could teach the students, which was super fun. We had there was one man who was teaching people to tie ties. That was probably the most popular station. There were people teaching different types of art. There was one woman who was teaching something about like composting or something, and you ended up with this sort of to me like kind of gross jar of something, and she was like, "You take it home." Um, and it was just like very fun. Uh, and everybody got to learn, and they really enjoyed that. Like, everyone was teaching, everyone was learning. It was going both ways. And then so you don't have to go back, but I just have that bullet on for that event. The students got instruction on the media literacy so they could teach that, but they also got direct instruction on conversation skills because they had to sit at lunch and have a conversation with their community members. And so that was a part of it too. And so the public, with Miss Info Day, we saw how, the public library, um, that one event, they had their public librarian come in and speak to them. And that same public librarian from Hoboken, later in the year, in April, she hosted a media mentorship night at the library where students from that school came and presented. And I believe that she invited students from other schools, or maybe even from uh, like teens that would come to the library regularly as well. And then I just finished a workshop series with Yakima Valley Libraries here, and it was a small group of librarians and teachers from the school district, and we were um, figuring out like how could we all work together to make an event like this. And they also landed on the public library will host the event, and the teachers will prepare the students to then go present at the event. Um, so I think that's a pretty cool model because a lot of the teachers and school librarians who have done it at their school, they love it, and like the energy is really good and the community connections are amazing. But it's a lot of work to put on an event like that. So I think it's kind of nice if you can split it up where the public library can take on some of that, like kind of putting on the event and putting promoting it and things to the community, and then the teacher can make sure the students are prepared to go teach the community. And I think, yeah, so that's all the examples we have to present, and I'll just real quick go through some tips, and then we'll get to our Q&A. So this is from Stacey and I, some things we have learned. One of mine is to check your expectations. I think a lot of us worry a lot about what teenagers are seeing on social media, and like rightly so sometimes. But we've also had people tell us stories of doing that activity where the students look at their social media, and there's this one student who was like, it's just cats. Like, and the teacher was like, it can't just be cats. And she was like, look, like it's just a bunch of funny cats. And so it was a little bit of like the kids are all right moment where we can maybe relax a little bit, at least for some of our students. They're just looking at funny cats. Um, Giving teens opportunities to share and explore first. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this. Much better to, give them something to do and dive into it together than to kind of lecture at them. As Stacey was saying, using fun and games as a bridge to more consequential examples and discussions. And the last one, building this into what you already do, which I don't know that we've touched on, but Stacey could maybe speak to this a little better than me, but we've talked with public librarians who are like, well, I already do a book club, or I already do this program, and kind of what is like a mini something of information literacy that you could just kind of attach on to that thing you're already doing. Like you don't have to do a brand new program. You can kind of take a piece that you've seen today and add it in.
Yeah, just to add on that, like I know when I was working with the teen librarians this spring and summer, they're like, well, we have a game night. Like we have a very established teen game night or a teen night, where they come in. And so I want something that is lightweight enough that it would feel like appropriate to be in that, that we can do that as part of those activities. So again, not doing something extra, but just adding it into what they already do. And so yes, we have I think 10 minutes for Q&A. But we have a resource handout that we'll send to Kim that she'll share, and it has like links to everything that we talked about today. And then we're also in the works of updating the CIP website, so then those all that the like laundry list of links is like has a place. So you don't need a doc to find everything. But then we're also, Liz and I are very open and happy to chat. So if and I would say that roughly the person who talked about the thing is the person to reach out to. So like if you're interested in some of these like programs that I talked about, feel free to reach out to me. And then if you're interested in like Miss Info Day, Media Mentorship Night, I reach out to Liz. And then if we're not the right person, we're more than happy to connect you to the correct ones. But yeah, I'm happy to turn it over to questions, and I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share just so we can see each other better. And yeah,
Great.
I'll
I actually had one come in to me
great.
just through like a side message, so you all won't be able to see it. But it asked, and it's actually a very good question. Do you ever get pushback from teens or the community who don't agree with reliable sources?
So yeah, that's an excellent question. And so I think that that is something that we have, and something I didn't touch upon, but I especially was talking about the games. So I think in the so for example, so for the Forge and Escape Room, when we did a one of the bigger tests of that game, we specifically recruited small and rural libraries from across the U.S. and because we wanted to make sure that that activity would work regardless of basically like a political context. And we had a rural Louisiana library and also a rural like Oklahoma library, and they told us that it was such a great way because they didn't talk about misinformation when they talked about it. It was like talking about the online information environment, trying to understand, and again it was framed mostly as an escape room. And so they didn't and then also that those games, something I neglected to mention with the escape rooms in particular, are all focused around fictional situations. So and what was really interesting about that is that I wrote a paper based on the test what the libraries did, but you could see that different people would again brings their own political lens to it because as I mentioned, it talked about like a supplement in the water. And so some people were really focused on like, well, you can't trust the government. And other people was like, I can't trust corporations. And so again, they were able to kind of it fit based on their own viewpoint. And so I think that again, it's up to you and your own environment to know how to frame these activities and what particular language to use. We also had an interesting discussion with this last cohort of libraries where it was like, I can use the word misinformation with some of the adults in my community, and others were like, no, I can't use that word. I could use fake news. And then also somebody was interesting. It's like if I use the word misinformation, the kids' parents would want them to come, but the kids wouldn't come. So that was what they're so so yeah, so I think that that is again, it's very contextual um and yeah, and I don't know if Liz, if you have anything else to kind of add, especially around like, getting into particular sources, especially around like using SIFT or things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I put a link in the chat too to a page on the Media Mentorship website that has some tips about before you start, what you should be thinking about. And I the question was around have we like seen pushback? And I would say no. Like we have not, people are certainly worried about it. And because of that, we are being proactive and trying to make sure that we're accounting for, what their concerns are. And I haven't actually heard a specific example from a teacher. Um, but maybe that's because all the proactive things we have done have been working. So the page on the Media Mentorship website just recommends, whoever's facilitating being really explicit about what they're doing. Like we're learning how to find information, and if there's like some phrases that I like, one of the, like, I'm not trying to tell you what to believe. What you believe is your business. I am trying to make sure that you know how to find out about a source. If the source you're using is known for spreading misinformation, you should know that. If the source you're using is a national newspaper, you should know that. Like it's up to you to decide what to do with that information. There's other like phrases. We teach SIFT, which is a method some of you probably are familiar with by Mike Caulfield. It uses lateral reading to find SIFT is for like when you see a claim or a source you don't know about, kind of steps you can go through to figure out if you trust it. And he has a lot of good phrases that are, he'll be doing an example and he'll say, okay, so like for this for this specific instance, we've learned that this is not the best source in the world. Like, does that mean the source is always wrong? No. It just means that for like this thing we're trying to figure out, there's probably a better source out there. So just trying not to have, kind of generalizing language or like painting a source as all good, all bad, etc. Everything is contextual. Um, and then the other thing I would add is similar to Stacey, where she was saying, we can get at this from different ways. The um, two other things that I think people are more willing to talk about are financial, like scams, and AI now, I think is a really good way into it.
And we got another question, and those are such good points. And I was also thinking about the potential benefits to having some sort of facilitators training when running through these questions too, just sort of ways to have conversation and engage and asking open-ended questions instead of like telling someone something. So this really has my brain going. We have another question in the chat. Do you think the kids who need this most are the least likely to come? Sorry to be a pessimist, but I know in public libraries in particular, it's a fair question because like the public library, possibly different from certain school libraries, this space where teens don't have to go, right? Whereas like maybe they're not in their school library, but they're in the school. And it's very different in a public library space. So it's a fair question, and I think we all understand what you mean.
Yes, absolutely. And this has definitely been come up a lot when we talk to its public librarians. And I think that is those kids are exactly who we're trying to reach through the games. Because again, that again, it's the focus isn't necessarily on this kind of these learning outcomes, but it's about the fun. I would also say that things like the video program, like that we also do again, because the for the teen, the focus is on again creating something, and we as part of these testing, especially with the video program, I know one of the early run throughs we did with the public library, like we had a handout and the teens were like, oh man, school, it was like immediate. And so we're like, okay, like, and so we were like really try for those types of activities to steer clear of like I think yeah anything that kind of smells like school to keep those kids engaged and interested. And again, some kids are excited, are fine with that. But yeah, we again try to have a variety of different things to reach different people. Yeah, the mentoring thing, absolutely. Yeah, I know one of the libraries that I worked with does have like some mentoring teens, and they've talked about incorporating that. I mean, one thing I failed to mention with some of these things where the libraries are testing them right now, and there's actually going to be some opportunities for libraries to test some of these out in a more formal way. We're starting this process of with some of these activities that haven't gone through the same public library testing as part of the development process. We're going to be recruiting libraries to get feedback on it. So we'll be definitely sharing that information with Kim so she can share it with you if you're interested and available for that. Um, and then one other thing before it goes out of my mind is that in this past January, we did a session at LibLearnX on how to have one-on-one conversations with patrons around misinformation, and it was more focused on adults. But I'm happy to share that's the slide deck with you. And yeah, Kim, if you're interested in that, like we did get some questions around like teens and kids and stuff, and we just didn't have as much the group of people there. So it'd be interesting to think about like how would that be different in slightly different settings. So definitely all things that we're thinking about and working on for sure.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I did just add it to the chat. But for everyone, give me like 5 business days. We download, but then also make sure that we caption all of our recordings. And sometimes the captions require a bit of adjusting. And then I will make sure I send an email out to all the listservs with access to the recording and slides and all the support material. So it is 2:01. Really quickly, I just want to drop in the chat because I'm here with folks who are working with teens. We got a Transforming Teen Services in-person cohort, 4 sessions at the service center coming up. And on election day, a day-long workshop on trusted adults making all the difference, establishing stronger connections and healthier boundaries with adults and young people from one trusted adult. If I have my way, this will not be the last time we hear from Stacey and Liz. My brain is actually already thinking of some things that might, who knows? Who knows? For anyone who knows me, my brain is always running. Feel if other folks have questions later, I'm sure Stacey and Liz are happy if you send them directly to them, or feel free to send them to me if you lose their contact information and I can forward them on your behalf. Thank you everyone so much for being here today and for listening. I hope your brains are percolating on how you can involve some of these activities with your teens or create some new activities based off of what you've heard here. And Liz and Stacey, I just know that the minute I send all these resources out, you're going to get a lot of clicks on these websites and a lot of clicks on these activities because I plan to do it as well. So thank you everybody for sharing a part of your day with us. I know it's hard, especially because school's about to let out in like a half hour in a lot of places. So thank you everybody.
Thanks so much for inviting us, Kim. Thanks everyone for being
Absolutely.
here. Have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you.